Today, me and Tuck are going to share with you 10 mistakes you cannot afford to make when transplanting into the garden. Let's go! I think the best way to share these mistakes is to transplant out some veggies and highlight the mistakes as I transplant them out. Our goal is to have our plants go into their new homes with the least amount of stress possible so they not only continue growth but explode into rapid growth. Before we even begin the act of transplanting, a number of mistakes are often made. You'll come to find that proper transplanting is as much about good timing and planning as it is about a good technique or skill. The first mistake is the most common one that new gardeners make, and I've been guilty of it myself. It's transplanting out too early, especially when it comes to the summer veggies like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. Once the first nice day comes, we want to immediately get out there and get everything planted. But patience is important here. The last thing we want is to plant out early some of our summer veggies like peppers or something, then a late frost comes and we're out there scrounging around trying to cover everything. I've done it before and it's not worth the extra hassle. The menace has jumped into the garden. The boss, what are you doing in here, buddy? This guy hopped right into the garden. He's looking for some snacks. He wants some of these mustard greens. He likes the stems, so I'll give him a piece. I just don't want him tripping over these strings in here. Come on, boy. Come on, boy, up. Let's get him out. Let's let him get a snack. He loves the stems. He likes getting all the water from these mustard greens. This guy loves being in the garden and grabbing his own snacks. If you love seeing Tuck in the videos, spam some hearts down low for the young king. We'll let him snack on these. There you go, boy. So when it comes to your summer veggies, especially something like cucumbers, they hate the cold. I won't plant my cucumbers into the garden till at least 3 or 4 weeks after our last expected frost date. What we don't want is to cause some damage to those young plants. And the idea is to have consistent growth, not for those plants to just go into the ground and then sit there and wait for the nice weather to come. We want to get them in the ground when it's nice out already, and then they'll just explode into growth. So when it comes to planting your summer veggies, it's always better to plant things out a few days late rather than too early. One late frost will erase a lot of hard work. The second mistake is not hardening off your plants, which is essentially just getting your plants acclimated to the environment they'll be transplanted into. About a week before you transplant, you want to get your plants used to the outside temperatures, and you want to make sure you do this slowly. Start out by putting your plants in a shady spot with little wind for about an hour. I like to use this shade cloth. It helps me create my own shade. It's really nice. I also like to use this insect netting. It helps cut the wind and puts less stress on the plants. So that works nice. Then bring your plants inside after that first hour. The next day, bring your plants outside for a few hours and let them get a little more light. Then as time progresses, you want to make sure that your plants can stay outside for a whole day and night before you transplant them into the garden. Then when you do transplant, your plants will be more acclimated to the temperatures, and the only real big adjustment for them will be actually the soil. This will reduce transplant shock. If your plants get a lot of transplant shock, you could end up having just them sit there and not really do anything. So all the time that we spent starting something like a tomato or a pepper early could be erased because when we put them in, it'll take a long time for them to adjust. So essentially all that extra effort we just wasted, and that's a sad scenario. The third mistake is transplanting out at the wrong time of day. Similar to the hardening off, our goal is to make it so the transition from the pot into the ground is a smooth transition and there's not a lot of stress. So the best time to transplant is either in the early morning or in the evening. But the most ideal time to transplant is on a day like today where it's cloudy and there's a little bit of drizzle. That's the best, because what we don't want is to take our plants, to put them into the ground in the middle of the day when it's a hot day, and they just end up cooking because the roots haven't tapped into the ground yet and the sun is beating down on them. That's absolutely what we do not want. It reminds me of a story that Bill Mollison told about how he went to Africa, and the women just inherently knew that when they transplanted into their garden, because it was so sunny, they would take sticks and build their own version of a shade cloth to help keep those plants safe. He would ask, how do you know to do that? They would say, you don't leave your baby out in the hot sun. So that's that same mindset. We want to take care of these plants when we're transplanting them into the garden. This is a very stressful situation. We want to make it as simple for them and as comfortable for them as possible. That's why even using the shade cloth is a good option if you have to transplant out in the heat of the day. Me and Tuck want to take a second to show you some fantastic products we have over at our website, teamgrow.us right now. These are self-watering planters. This one is specifically designed for growing tomatoes. They have incredible features. You gotta check them out right now at teamgrow.us. The fourth mistake you want to avoid, if possible, is not transplanting out root-bound or super stressed plants. For instance, when it comes to peppers, if you see peppers starting to flower, that's actually a telltale sign that they're either root-bound and or stressed. Most gardeners, when they see young plants like peppers with flowers on them or with young peppers on them, they think that's a great thing, but it's actually not a good thing at all. Typically, peppers take about 2 months after they're transplanted into the garden to produce flowers and fruit. So we want to make sure that we're getting plants in the ground that are still in the vegetative growth stage, not in the production stage. That's just a sign that they're stressed out, and if possible, it's a good idea to steer clear of these kinds of plants. The same thing goes for determinate tomatoes and most tomato plants. If you see them flowering at a young age, that's just a sign that they're stressed. We want to put our plants in the ground while they're still growing, and we want them to reach the age of maturity and production when they get larger and they're healthy, and then they can just kick out a lot of food when they're a big plant. Think about it. One big healthy plant can produce a lot of fruit, as opposed to one small plant that's flowering and fruiting. That's not going to produce a lot of fruit. We avoided the earlier mistakes. Now it's time to get a tomato transplanted out. Typically, I'll wait about 2 weeks after my last expected frost date to plant my tomatoes, because I don't want the temperature of the air at night to go any lower than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm still about a week away from when I actually transplant mine into the garden, but I'm just going to show you how I do it. So first off, the fifth mistake we want to avoid is we want to make sure that we're watering our plants either the night before or the day of transplanting, because if they're super dried out, it's going to be really stressful for them to be dried out and being transplanted into the garden. Next, what we want to do is we want to avoid the sixth mistake of improper spacing. We want to make sure that we're spacing things correctly. That's why I love square foot gardening. If we plant things too closely together, then they're going to kind of stress each other out. So with square foot gardening, it allows me to get the most out of the space that I have while still getting good individual yield and not stressing the plants out. Let's get this dug in here. Because we're planting things relatively dense in the square foot method, we want to avoid the mistake of not fertilizing our plants when transplanting out, because we want to make sure they have proper nutrition when they're going into the garden. So we'll take some fertilizer, we'll mix it into the soil at the bottom, mix it in like this. Then we don't want to make the eighth mistake of not putting in some mycos when transplanting. I'll show you how I do that. But first, you see I'm removing these leaves because we want to avoid the ninth mistake of planting at the wrong depth. So let's first get into that eighth mistake. So flip this over. You can see those roots on there, look really nice. Next, I'm going to add some of this mycos. What this is going to do is help with the transplanting. It's going to avoid some transplant shock, and it's going to also inoculate the plant with the mycorrhizal association. We'll plant a little more than we'll put a little more than we need. So the ninth mistake is planting at the wrong depth. When it comes to something like tomatoes, you want to plant them deep up to the first set of leaves, like you see like that. So we'll put this in nice and deeply and push it down. So just like that, because tomatoes will root from the stem. So we want to plant these deeply, just like this. When it comes to something like brassica, like you see over here, we don't want to bury the stems deep of those ones. We want to bury them essentially as deep as they came out of the pot. Sometimes I'll bury a little extra just to help with the stability. Or if you see this one over here, you can see I didn't bury this up to the first set of leaves. So when it comes to planting, you want to make sure you're transplanting in at the right depth. Then we don't want to make the mistake of forgetting to water our plants in after transplanting, because when we water them in, what this will do is it'll kind of settle the plant in and all the soil around it. So we'll get this all watered in, and I would let it sink down and water it again. And then the last mistake we really don't want to make is forgetting to label our plants. And when I first started gardening, I made the mistake of not labeling, and then when I did label, I made the mistake of not using the correct marker. a garden marker like this, because this marker won't wash off from the rain. So you want to use the right marker when labeling too. It seems like it's not that important, but it makes a big difference because you got to know what kind of variety you're growing. This way you can grow it the next year if it does really well for you. Those are the mistakes you must avoid when transplanting, and they may sound kind of simple, but when it comes down to it, the simple things are the things that make massive differences. I wish I could go back in time and just tell myself, slow down. Don't rush to get things in the ground, because new gardeners especially, you get so overly excited. I've been there. And you want to just put things in the ground immediately. You think that the more time plants have in the ground, that the bigger and better and faster they will grow, but that's just not the case. It's oftentimes getting plants at the right stage of growth into the ground at the right time. That's how you get big, healthy, consistent growth. Look at all these plants in here. I didn't have any issues with any of these things going into the ground because I planted them at the right time. It made less work for me. The plants did much better, and I wasn't just panicked running around trying to cover these plants. I mean, these are cold, hardy plants, but I'm far along with what time of year it is because I planted things at the right time. One of the reasons I was able to do that is because I have been journaling for years when I plant things in the ground, and then over time I've adjusted when I plant stuff because I've had my own information to reference. I suggest you do that. It becomes an invaluable tool. My journal is what I reference to put stuff into the ground. I don't have to try to go online or find like any information out there that isn't specific for my particular location. Check out the boss down here. He's just hanging out, relaxing. It's a good day to just chill out in the garden. He had some of his snacks. He ran around. He's been working, protecting the garden. We had a duck in here that came into the garden earlier. It didn't know the boss was back here. He had to end up chasing it off, but it's nice to see some of the ducks come back in here, the birds. Everyone loves the food forest. It's literally a paradise for everybody. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something out of it. We hope that you truly got value out of this video. And again, it seems simple, some of the stuff, but I'm telling you, be patient. Follow a lot of this guideline. Don't make these mistakes and you'll have massive harvests coming in consistently. Me and Tucker are going to take you around in the garden in a video soon. Everything looks fantastic. We can't wait to kind of show off a little bit how things are growing. Try to encourage you guys to get some stuff planted if you haven't yet, and get some fruit trees in the ground, get some annuals going. Everything's gonna pay off for you in the future. Me and Tuck wanted to send a thank you to one of our new channel members, Jazz Vent. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for having your hand in everything we're doing out here. I mentioned you earlier in a different video, but I forgot to put your little name up here, so I figured we had a pop in the background. I think someone's mowing a lawn or something. So I figured I'd mention it again. If you guys want to be part of the team, hit the Join Now button down below. And we also want to mention to check out some of the merch to be part of the team, and also check out some of the fantastic gardening products we have over at teamgrow.us. James and Tuck will be back again real soon. We